I was sitting at the breakfast table with my 6-year-old grandson when he suddenly looked at me with those serious eyes kids sometimes get. Between bites of cereal, he said something that froze me completely. "Dad did something strange in your car after dropping you home yesterday." At first I thought I misheard him, but he repeated it, calm and certain. My heart started racing because in that moment, everything I thought I knew about my family and my safety changed. I tried to act normal so nobody would notice the fear inside me, but deep down, I felt a cold wave of panic. His little words didn't sound like imagination. They sounded like a warning. And from that second on, every memory, every detail of the past few weeks took on a new meaning. That breakfast was the moment my life stopped being ordinary, and it became something I never imagined I would face. Before we continue with this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Because when you stop doing this, YouTube understands that you don't like this content and stops recommending good stories like this. Oh, and don't forget to comment below where you're watching us from. We love to know that. That morning started like any other. I was at the table with my coffee and toast, and Ethan, my 6-year-old grandson, was busy picking at his cereal. Out of nowhere, he looked at me with that calm, serious face kids sometimes get, and he said, "He messes with your brakes." At first, I thought maybe I misheard him, but his words hit me so hard I froze. I tried to laugh it off, like maybe it was just one of those strange things kids come up with, but inside my chest, it felt like everything went cold. My mind instantly went to Mark, my husband. We'd been married for more than 20 years, and I had never once imagined he could be capable of something dark. But when Ethan said those words, little moments started flashing in my head. Mark always insisted on walking me out to my car, always made sure to check the tires or stand by while I started the engine. I used to think it was just him being protective, but now, hearing Ethan, I wondered if it was more than that. I forced a smile at Emily, my daughter-in-law, not wanting her to sense my panic, but my hands were shaking under the table. The rest of breakfast felt like I was sitting on glass. Ethan went back to his cereal, talking about something silly, like superheroes or school friends, and Emily just kept chatting about her day. I nodded along, but my mind was miles away. I couldn't stop replaying Ethan's words. "He messes with your brakes." Kids don't usually invent things like that without picking it up from somewhere. Did Ethan see something? Did Mark say something around him by mistake? I didn't dare ask him in front of Emily, because she would have worried or asked questions I wasn't ready to answer. My marriage was supposed to be solid, boring even, with all its routines and habits. Now I was sitting there questioning whether the man who'd shared my bed for 2 decades might actually be putting me in danger. My stomach churned, but I kept smiling, kept pretending everything was fine. It was one of those moments where every word out of my mouth felt fake, like I was acting in my own house just to keep the peace. When we finished breakfast, I excused myself to get ready for the errands I had planned. My heart was pounding as I grabbed my purse and keys, because for the first time in my life, I was scared to get into my own car. I walked outside and looked at it differently. Every detail stood out. The tires, the hood, the little scratches on the door. My mind was stuck on the brakes. What if they didn't work? What if the next time I hit the pedal, nothing happened? Mark wasn't around, but I could picture him in my head, standing there like he always did, reminding me to drive safe. Back then, it felt like care. Now it felt like a setup. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was being paranoid, that I couldn't jump to conclusions over something a child said. But even as I told myself that, I couldn't believe it. My gut wouldn't let me. The key felt heavy in my hand as I opened the door. Once I started driving, every movement felt dangerous. My fingers gripped the wheel too tight, and I barely breathed when I pressed the brakes at the stop sign near the corner. The car slowed down like normal, but instead of relief, it just made me more anxious. I thought, maybe it works now, but what about later? I drove slower than usual, checking every mirror, keeping too much space between me and the car ahead. People honked at me, but I didn't care. My head was filled with thoughts about Mark. I tried to remember if there were any times he had been angry enough to want me hurt, and nothing obvious came to mind. But maybe it wasn't anger. Maybe it was something else, something hidden. I thought back to the way he always insisted on fixing little things himself, instead of letting me call a mechanic. At the time, I thought he was saving us money. Now it looked like he wanted control. Control of my safety. Control of what I didn't notice. By the time I pulled into the grocery store lot, I felt like I'd run a marathon. My shoulders were stiff from how tightly I held the wheel. I sat in the car for a minute, staring at people walking past with their bags, living normal lives. I wondered if anyone around me could guess what I was thinking, that I was suddenly afraid of the man I had trusted for half my life. It was like I had stepped into a different version of reality, where nothing I thought was true could be trusted anymore. I wanted to call someone, maybe a friend, maybe even Emily. But what would I say? That my 6-year-old grandson gave me a warning and now I believed my husband was sabotaging my car? It sounded crazy, even to me. But the fear was real. I could feel it in my stomach, in my shaking hands. I locked the car and went inside, but my mind never left the brakes. Driving home was worse. Every turn felt like it could be the one where everything failed. The closer I got to the house, the more nervous I became. I didn't know how to look at Mark anymore. Was he going to smile at me and ask how my errands went? Was he going to offer to help carry the bags? And would I see kindness in those actions or danger? By the time I parked in the driveway, I didn't know what to believe. The garage door opened, and I saw him standing there like always waving at me. I forced a smile back, but inside, the doubt was eating me alive. For the first time in my marriage, I looked at him and wondered if he wanted me safe or if he wanted me gone. That question didn't leave me. Not even when I turned off the car and pretended everything was normal again. I didn't waste any time after what happened that morning. As soon as I felt the panic crawling through me, I called Carl, the mechanic I've trusted for years. My voice was shaking when I asked him if he could come to Emily's house right away. I told him I couldn't drive my car, that I was too scared something was wrong. Carl didn't ask too many questions, just said he'd be there in half an hour. I sat by the window the whole time, watching for his truck, biting at my nails and trying not to let Emily notice how nervous I was. When he finally pulled into the driveway, I rushed outside with my keys. I tried to act normal, but my hands wouldn't stop trembling. I told him I needed him to check my brakes carefully, like his life depended on it. Carl crouched by the car and started his usual routine, but after a few minutes, I saw his face change. He wasn't casual anymore. He looked serious, focused, like he'd found something he didn't want to find. My heart was pounding so hard I felt dizzy. I knew in that instant he'd seen something real, not just my paranoia. Carl stood up slowly, wiped his hands on a rag, and looked straight at me. His face said it all before he even spoke. "This isn't normal wear," he said. "Someone's been at this on purpose." My knees almost gave out. I leaned against the car, trying not to fall over. He explained that the brake lines had been tampered with, not just worn down by use. Whoever did it had made it so the brakes would work for a little while, but eventually fail completely, probably when I needed them most. I thought of the steep road I always take to get home. How many times I had driven it with no idea that one wrong moment could have killed me. The idea made me sick to my stomach. I asked him if he could put that in writing, something official, and he nodded. I also begged him not to say a word to anyone, not even the police. Not yet. He looked confused, even worried about my decision, but I couldn't risk it. I needed to be absolutely sure before I blew up my whole life. When Carl left, I stayed in the kitchen for a long time, staring at the counter like it would give me answers. My mind was running wild. If the brakes were sabotaged, it wasn't just a random accident. It meant someone close to me wanted me gone. I already knew who I suspected, but saying it out loud, even in my own head, felt impossible. Mark, the man who had been my husband for more than 20 years, the one who tucked me in with coffee in the mornings, the one who smiled at the neighbors like we were the perfect couple. Could he really want to hurt me? Could he really be planning my death? I couldn't breathe thinking about it. The walls of the house felt like they were closing in on me. I decided I needed proof, something I couldn't ignore, something that would tell me the truth once and for all. My hands shook as I made up my mind to look through his office. Mark always kept it neat, always locked it when he wasn't around, but I knew his habits. I knew where he hid things. Later that same day, while Mark was out, I went into his office. The smell of his cologne lingered in the room, and it made me sick with nerves. I pulled open the drawers one by one, feeling like a thief in my own house. At first, I only found the usual papers, bills, receipts, boring files, but then I saw a folder tucked behind the filing cabinet, almost invisible. My heart skipped a beat as I pulled it out. The folder was thick, filled with documents that made my stomach twist. The first thing I saw was a life insurance policy. It had my name on it. $2 million. I stared at the signature at the bottom and knew instantly it wasn't mine. It was forged. My hands were clammy as I flipped through more pages, each one making me feel like I was sinking deeper into something I couldn't escape. I felt betrayed in a way I didn't know was possible. This wasn't just a suspicion anymore. It was written proof that Mark had been planning something awful, something final. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. Alongside the insurance papers, there were maps, literal maps of my daily routes. He had marked the streets I drove, the times I usually left the house, even little notes about places I liked to stop. It was like reading a playbook of my life, every move I made documented by the man who was supposed to love me. I found scribbled notes about schedules, appointments, even the steep hill I drove down every week. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the papers. It was clear. I wasn't just paranoid, and this wasn't some random danger. It was calculated. Mark had turned me into a target, like I was just another problem to be solved. I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. But the evidence was right in front of me, staring back like a monster I couldn't ignore. By the time I finished going through the files, my whole body felt numb. I sat in his office chair, surrounded by the papers, and I didn't know whether to scream or cry. For 22 years, I thought I knew this man. I thought I knew his habits, his moods, his love. But now I saw everything differently. Every "be careful" when I left the house, every "I'll walk you to the car" suddenly felt like a trap, not care. My marriage had turned into something I didn't recognize, and I was the only one who hadn't seen it coming. I gathered up the documents and shoved them back where I found them, my heart racing. When I finally walked out of that room, I wasn't the same person who had walked in. I knew one thing for sure. Mark wasn't just my husband anymore. He was the man planning to kill me, and I had no idea what I was going to do about it. I was still shaking when I picked up the phone and called my sister Susan. She's always been the one who sees through people, the one who notices things the rest of us miss. Even though she doesn't work as a paralegal anymore, her suspicious nature never left her. When she answered, I didn't waste time. My words came out rushed, messy, and I told her everything. Ethan's warning, Carl's discovery, and the insurance papers I'd found in Mark's office. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and for a second I thought the call had dropped. But then I heard her sigh, low and heavy. Susan didn't rush to comfort me. She didn't say, maybe it's a mistake, or you're overreacting. Instead, she said something simple, but terrifying. You need to get out of there, or you need solid proof. I sat there clutching the phone, knowing she was right. Running sounded impossible, but staying felt like a death sentence. Then she mentioned Olivia, one of her old friends, who now worked for the FBI. Not just any agent. Olivia specialized in financial crimes. My heart jumped. Maybe this was the lifeline I needed. Susan promised to make the call right away. The next day, true to her word, Susan showed up at my house with Olivia. I remember opening the door and seeing her, tall, confident, with that calm but sharp look in her eyes, like she could spot a lie before you finished speaking it. She wasn't in a suit or anything flashy, just jeans and a plain jacket. But something about the way she carried herself made me trust her immediately. We sat in the kitchen, and I started telling her everything from the beginning. My voice cracked a few times, but she didn't interrupt. She listened carefully, writing notes, and occasionally asked me to slow down so she could catch every detail. When I brought out the folder from Mark's office, her whole demeanor changed. She flipped through the pages quickly, then more slowly, her eyes scanning every line. I could tell she was connecting dots I couldn't even see. I felt both relieved and sick watching her work. It was like watching someone uncover the truth about your own life, piece by piece. Olivia laid the papers out across the table, sorting them into little piles. "This isn't just about you," she said finally. Her voice was calm, but the weight of her words hit me like a punch. She pointed to the insurance policy, then to the maps, and then to some handwritten notes. "This pattern doesn't look like a one-time plan. It looks practiced." I didn't understand at first, so she explained. When someone plans something like this, especially with this much detail, it usually isn't their first attempt. She looked at me straight in the eye. "Has anyone close to your husband died recently? Friends? Relatives?" My stomach flipped. I thought back to the last few years. A neighbor who fell down the stairs. A coworker of Mark's who had a heart attack, even though he was healthy. His cousin who died in what they called a car accident. At the time, All of it seemed like bad luck around him, but now, sitting there, it started to look like a trail leading to me. Hearing that possibility out loud made everything feel 10 times heavier. I stared at Olivia, hoping she would take it back, but she didn't. She laid out scenarios, calmly, logically, like she'd seen this pattern before. People around Mark might not have just died by chance. They might have been tests, rehearsals, practice runs before he came after me. I felt like my whole world was collapsing. The idea that my husband wasn't just planning to kill me, but that he may have killed others already, turned my fear into full-blown terror. Susan put her hand on mine, and for the first time since this all started, I felt a little less alone. But that didn't make it easier. It made it scarier, because now 2 other people knew, and if Mark ever found out we were digging into his secrets, I knew he wouldn't hesitate. Olivia leaned back, folded her arms, and said something that still makes my skin crawl. If we don't move carefully, you might not get another chance. She showed me how to clip it inside my shirt, close enough to pick up conversations without being noticed. You need to act normal, she said. Smile. Talk like always. Don't give him any reason to suspect, but record everything. Every word could matter. My hands shook as I held the device. The thought of pretending everything was fine while secretly recording my husband made me feel sick, but I also knew she was right. We needed proof, and without it, I was just a terrified wife with a story no one would believe. I practiced turning the recorder on and off until I was sure I could do it without fumbling. Susan kept watching me, her face pale, and Olivia gave me a nod like she trusted me to handle it. That nod was the only thing keeping me steady. When Mark came home that evening, I felt like I was stepping onto a stage. He smiled, kissed my cheek, asked about my day, just like always. I smiled back, hiding the recorder under my shirt, and forced my voice to sound casual. Every laugh, every glance, every simple answer felt like it carried life or death weight. I thought about what Olivia said. Any word, any smile, any moment could make the difference between living and dying. Sitting at the dinner table across from him, with his papers still burned into my mind, I felt like I was dining with a stranger. But I kept my mask on, because survival depended on it. And from that night on, my life wasn't just about being careful. It was about playing a role so perfectly that Mark would never guess I finally knew the truth. When Mark first suggested a trip to Wisconsin Dells, I knew something was wrong. He called it a romantic weekend, the kind of getaway we hadn't done in years, and he talked about it with so much excitement that it almost sounded forced. He booked a chalet, told me it would be quiet, private, just the 2 of us. On the surface, it sounded sweet, but my stomach twisted the second he said it. Olivia and the FBI had already warned me that he might try to make his move somewhere isolated, where no one could help me. The chalet he picked fit that description too perfectly. It had a balcony that looked right over jagged rocks. The second I saw the pictures online, I understood. This wasn't a trip for us to reconnect. This was going to be his stage. I agreed to go, pretending to be excited. While inside, I felt like I was walking straight into a trap. Olivia promised they would be there, hidden, ready. I carried the small recorder she had given me, hidden under my clothes. Every step of preparing for that weekend felt like I was preparing for a final exam. Only the cost of failure wasn't a bad grade. It was my life. The drive there felt endless. Mark talked more than usual, asking me about my favorite memories, about the first time we met, about little things like he was trying to make the day feel special. I smiled, gave him the answers he wanted, but the whole time I felt my body tense. I kept glancing at him out of the corner of my eye, wondering if this was the last car ride I'd ever take. When we arrived at the chalet, it looked exactly how I had feared, cozy to anyone else, but to me, it screamed danger. It was set apart from everything, the balcony hanging too low over sharp rocks. I kept thinking, this is where he's going to do it. I unpacked my bag slowly, pretending to be comfortable, while I scanned every corner, every angle, trying to picture what would happen. I told myself to stay calm, to remember Olivia's advice, act natural, record everything, and wait. But being alone with him there, knowing what he planned, made every second stretch out painfully long. That evening, we went out to dinner at a small restaurant nearby. Mark ordered wine, spoke softly, and smiled in that way people do when they're trying too hard. He talked about us, about our marriage, about how much I meant to him. But instead of feeling warm, his words felt like goodbyes. Every sentence sounded rehearsed, like he had prepared them in advance. I nodded, smiled, pretended to be touched, while inside I thought, he's saying this because he knows what's coming. I kept my recorder hidden and prayed it was picking up every word. Olivia had told me this was crucial, his own voice confirming his intentions. Sitting across from him, I felt like I was already attending my own funeral, only I was expected to smile through it. He reached for my hand, squeezed it gently, and I almost pulled away, but I forced myself to stay calm. The whole dinner felt like a countdown. When we drove back to the chalet, my heart raced. I knew the real test was coming. Back at the room, Mark set the scene like he was playing a role. He opened a bottle of champagne, poured it into 2 glasses, and handed one to me. I lifted it slowly, pretending not to notice the tiny residue floating at the bottom of the glass. But I did notice, and it froze me inside. It wasn't bubbles, it wasn't dust. It was something else. Poison, maybe. Olivia had warned me he might try something like this. I brought the glass to my lips, tilted it just enough so it looked like I took a sip, then set it down carefully. He smiled at me like nothing was wrong. I smiled back, even though my heart was pounding so hard I thought he could hear it. I kept thinking, don't mess this up. Don't let him know you know. He finished his own glass, not even realizing I had barely touched mine. My hands felt cold, but I stayed steady. Then came the moment I'd been dreading. Mark walked me out to the balcony, his arm around me, his voice suddenly quieter. He stood so close I could feel the tension in his body. He leaned near my ear and whispered, "I'm sorry for what I'm about to do." My entire body locked up. I had known this was coming, but hearing him actually say it made my blood run cold. And then it happened. He shoved. But thanks to Olivia and the quick training they gave me, I moved. I twisted just enough to keep my balance and avoided the push. For a second, everything slowed down. His face wasn't loving anymore. It was cold, focused. He had truly meant to kill me right there. That was the proof. That was the moment I finally saw the real man behind all the smiles. Suddenly, bright lights exploded around us. Voices shouted. Agents poured in from hidden spots outside. Mark froze, shocked, his hands still out as if he could explain what he had just done. But there was no explaining now. The FBI agents grabbed him, pinned him down, and read him his rights. I stood there shaking, my knees weak, but I didn't fall. I clutched the railing, trying to process what had just happened. It was over. In seconds, everything I had been afraid of was real and exposed. Mark wasn't my husband anymore. He wasn't even the man I thought I knew. He was a criminal, a killer who had finally been caught. As they led him away, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. That night ended my life as a wife and began my life as a survivor. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I might actually live. When the investigation finally came to light, the truth about Mark was worse than anything I had ever imagined. The FBI dug into his past, and what they uncovered turned my stomach. He wasn't just a husband trying to get rid of his wife for money. He had been living a double life for years, hurting people in ways I never would have guessed. His love of fixing cars and mixing chemicals, things I thought were harmless hobbies, were really skills he used to kill. He had poisoned drinks, sabotaged vehicles, and manipulated situations, all for insurance payouts. Every little project in the garage, every late-night experiment had been practice. It felt like my whole marriage had been a stage play, and I had been the fool watching him pretend to be someone else. I couldn't stop replaying the years in my head, every smile, every gesture, trying to see if there had ever been signs. And maybe there were, but I had been blind. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was bone deep, like the man I trusted most had been a stranger the whole time. I thought losing him would be the worst thing in my life, but realizing who he really was turned out to be worse. The trial began months later, and from the first day it felt like walking into a nightmare. The courtroom was packed, filled with strangers, reporters, and people who had once thought Mark was a kind man. I sat in the front row, clutching my hands together, forcing myself to breathe as the charges were read. Murder, fraud, attempted murder, conspiracy. Each word sounded heavier than the last. The prosecutors didn't waste time. They laid out the insurance scams, the deaths connected to him, and the way everything tied together like a puzzle. I sat there thinking about how I had shared a bed with this man, eaten dinners with him, celebrated holidays, and now he was standing there, accused of being a serial killer. He kept glancing back at me during the hearings, his face calm, almost smug, like he thought he still had control. But every time our eyes met, I reminded myself that this was no longer my husband. This was the monster who tried to kill me. One of the most shocking moments was when Martha, the woman who had forged documents for him, took the stand. I had only known her in passing, just a name I had seen once or twice in Mark's papers, but hearing her talk made everything real. She admitted to forging my signature, creating fake contracts, and helping Mark get the insurance money. Her voice was flat, almost emotionless, as if she had convinced herself it was just business. Listening to her, I felt sick. To think that strangers had been helping him manipulate my life, my identity, my future, it made me want to scream. Then came Carl, my mechanic. He explained to the jury in detail how the brakes had been tampered with. He talked about the tools used, the cuts made, and how obvious it was that it wasn't an accident. I watched the jurors' faces as they took notes, their expressions tightening. For me, it was like hearing my fears repeated out loud, only now there was no room left to doubt. Even Ethan had to testify. My 6-year-old grandson walked up to the front of the courtroom, holding onto his mom's hand, looking small and scared. They asked him simple questions, and in his innocent way, he told them what he had seen. Grandpa messing with the car, touching the brakes, doing things he didn't understand. Hearing his tiny voice in that big room broke my heart. No child should ever have to sit there and talk about something like that, especially about someone they loved. But his words mattered. The room grew heavy and quiet when he spoke, and I knew those jurors were listening closely. My throat ached as I fought back tears. He was brave, braver than I had ever been. Seeing him there reminded me why I had survived, why I had kept going. I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting to make sure no one else, especially him, would ever be in danger again. The FBI's final reveal was the hardest blow. They showed pictures and videos of the hidden lab in the basement of my own house, a place I had walked past countless times without suspecting a thing. Chemicals lined up, tools organized with precision, documents spread out with notes. It looked more like a workshop for a criminal mastermind than a simple basement. They explained how each bottle, each piece of equipment, had been used in one death or another. Seeing the pictures made me feel sick, like my home had been a crime scene all along. It was unbearable to think about how many nights I had slept above that basement, completely unaware of what he was doing beneath my feet. The jurors were visibly shaken. Some of them turned away when the images were shown. And me, I sat frozen, my nails digging into my palms because I couldn't look away. I had to see it, to understand the depth of the betrayal. When the jury finally went to deliberate, I thought it would take days, but they came back within hours. The verdict was read aloud, guilty on all counts. Life in prison, no parole. I watched as they cuffed him, his hands behind his back, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel fear. I didn't cry either. I thought I might, but the tears never came. The pain that had once weighed me down had shifted into something else, a strange sense of release. The man who had lied to me, who had tried to kill me, who had built his whole life on destruction, was finally stripped of his power. Seeing him led away wasn't just justice, it was freedom. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe without fear, like I could start living a life that was truly mine. The role of wife had ended. What remained was me, alive and finally free. Months after the trial ended, I was no longer living in that house or anywhere near the life I once knew. I had moved to a smaller place in a different town, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could finally exhale. The walls didn't hold secrets, the basement wasn't a laboratory, and the kitchen table wasn't a stage for lies. Every day I worked to rebuild who I was, piece by piece. At first, I felt like nothing more than a victim, someone broken and discarded. But slowly, with therapy, with support from Susan and the FBI team that had saved me, I started to change how I saw myself. I wasn't just a victim anymore. I had survived. And that word, survivor, carried weight. It made me sit taller. It made me face the mirror with a little less shame. I knew I couldn't erase what Mark had done, but I could decide how I lived the rest of my life. That thought kept me moving forward, even when the memories clawed their way back. One day, while I was still trying to piece together this new version of myself, I got a message from a young woman named Rachel. She had found me through a support group, and her words hit me hard. She said she felt unsafe in her marriage. She didn't have proof, but she had instincts, little red flags she couldn't ignore. Reading her message was like looking into my own past. I remembered all the small things I had brushed off, the doubts I had buried, the unease I had silenced. I couldn't just ignore her. I met her for coffee, and as she described her situation, I recognized too many familiar patterns. The way her husband tracked her, the way he helped with her car, the way he dismissed her concerns. It was like watching my own nightmare repeat. My chest tightened, but I kept my face calm for her sake. I knew right then what I had to do. I reached out to Olivia and the FBI, explaining Rachel's fears and what she had told me. They took it seriously right away. We worked together quietly, gathering evidence, setting up safeguards, and making sure Rachel was never alone when things got tense. For weeks, I checked in with her, reminded her that she wasn't crazy, that what she felt was real, and that she had every right to be safe. When the FBI finally caught her husband trying to tamper with her car, I felt a rush of relief so strong it made me cry. Rachel's life had been spared because she spoke up, and because this time, someone listened. Watching her walk away from him, free and alive, made me realize something important. I hadn't just survived for myself. I had survived so I could help others see the truth before it was too late. That's when the idea of something bigger took root. I knew I couldn't do this alone, and I knew there were countless women out there just like Rachel, just like me, trapped in fear and confusion. So, with help from Susan, Olivia, and others who believed in the cause, we started what would become the Claire Johnson Foundation for Domestic Safety. At first, it was just a small project, hotlines, support groups, and connections to legal help. But word spread, and soon we were working with law enforcement, therapists, and shelters across the state. Every story that came to us was heartbreaking, but every life saved reminded me why this work mattered. My name was no longer tied to Mark's crimes. It was tied to hope, to change, to safety. My family was my anchor through it all. Ethan, my sweet grandson, loved to tell people how he had saved my life. He would puff up his little chest and say, "Grandpa tried to hurt her, but I stopped him." And in a way, he wasn't wrong. His innocent warning had set everything in motion. I told him often that he hadn't just saved me. He had saved many others too. His courage, his honesty had changed the course of so many lives. Watching him grow up, proud of his role in my survival, gave me more strength than he will ever know. Emily, too, stood by me through everything, and I leaned on her more than I can admit. They were proof that even after the worst betrayal, love and family could still exist, still thrive. Looking back, it's clear that horror shaped me, but it didn't define me. Out of all the pain came strength I never thought I had. I learned to trust myself, to pay attention to instincts, and most of all, to stop excusing behavior that made me feel unsafe. I'll never again confuse control with love or sacrifice my safety to keep the peace. That version of me is gone. What remains is a woman who chooses to live, to fight, and to help others do the same. The Claire Johnson Foundation is my proof that we can turn fear into power, that we can stop monsters before they destroy more lives. Every morning when I wake up, I remind myself, I survived. Not just once, but every day I choose to keep surviving. I choose to keep telling my story, to keep helping others find their way out of danger. That's my purpose now. I know evil exists. I know what it looks like up close. But I also know that strength can grow from pain, and life can be rebuilt from ashes. I am no longer a wife trapped in a cruel lie. I am a survivor, a guide, and a voice for those who haven't found theirs yet. And each day, when I choose survival, I win. And I'll keep winning, because I will never, ever stop choosing to live. Finally, we've reached the end of this story. I'm extremely happy that you've made it this far. Thank you very much for watching. Comment below what you thought and what was the best or worst part. Don't forget to subscribe until next time.